Hello, AP Psychers, and welcome to 9.4, our second part, looking at the group influences on behavior and your mental processes. In part one, we cover everything from social facilitation down to groupthink. Now we are starting with bystander effect, so I'm just going to go through these. It's further than I thought it was. Okay, so we are looking at the group influences on your behavior. And our question today is, does the presence of others, for our first term, does the presence of others change our willingness to help? So we've been looking at how groups affect the individual. Here we're looking specifically at how the group affects the individual's desire or maybe willingness to go about and help someone. So our book definition here, I find a little bit useless. I would like to focus you on it instead, bullet pointing your definition so that you can see the important things for a term. Here, we want to focus on three things for bystander effect. People are less likely to help someone if they are in a group. So people are going to be less likely to help someone if there's a whole bunch of people around them. And why is this the case? Because they believe that other people are more qualified. This is called diffusion of responsibility. I believe that I don't have the responsibility to do anything in this situation because someone else is probably better at this, is more equipped to help. So that responsibility to help gets diffused, gets spread out over everybody that is there. The easiest example of this is, let's pretend that you are in a crowded restaurant, someone is choking. Everyone kind of looks around. The responsibility to save the person who is choking diffuses throughout the entire room. You may make the assumption that, yeah, I took a CPR class. I know the Heimlich maneuver, but it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I bet there's someone else that's here that kind of knows this better than me. And that's where maybe the person then doesn't get the help they need. Examples are being in a crowded hallway. If you then drop your books and people are less likely to help you. Transversely, it also works if you're in a nearly empty restaurant and someone is choking, then that responsibility won't diffuse, it won't spread out, and the few people that are there are going to feel pressure to actually help. And then the bystander effect wouldn't happen because the group is small. Now, just one note here. I really think that this is a term that I don't feel comfortable fully accepting based upon current research. If you look what Richard Philpott has done, or what the term is actually based on, these things seem to be showing us in different directions. In 1964, Kitty Giannisi, yes, she was attacked and murdered. But I don't think it's a situation that the New York Times was correct in its reporting. If you read the actual reports and books upon this, it looks like those people, the 38 people that didn't respond to her attack and murder, don't really exist. This was a middle of the night attack at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was the middle of February, so people's windows were closed, and they weren't able to hear Kitty cry out. There were only 2 people that really could have, and they actually did call the police at that time. This doesn't seem to be an example of bystander effect at all, but kind of bad reporting. And if you read more accounts on this, you'll see that. Also note that Richard Philpott, in his studies, it looks like in analysis of attacks on people where groups are present, 90% of the time the group gets involved. And in fact, if the group is bigger, more people get involved. So while I want you to know the term bystander effect, I want you to be kind of skeptical about how real this thing is until more research rolls in. Now, what about your relationship with others? Does your expectations and your views and that influence change the relationship? And of course, the answer in social psych unit is yes. And one of the first ways that this works is through the reciprocity norm. Reciprocity norm is a norm, social norm, where if someone does something for you, then you feel obligated to do that in return. You should absolutely watch the Office clip here. It is fantastic. Here, Dwight and Andy are doing things for each other. Every time one does something, the other feels the need to do it. If anyone has ever given you a birthday present and then you felt the need to also get them a birthday present, that is the reciprocity norm. Now, the reciprocity norm also kind of ties into one of the more interesting I think things here about personal relationships, maybe it's a close friend, a sibling, or a significant other. Here, social exchange theory says that relationships are made up of that give and take. So the more I put into the relationship, the more I expect back. And to be happy in a relationship, we should be getting out of a relationship what we are putting into that relationship. We have to feel that that is a mutual exchange for us to be happy, which could explain why in relationships where there isn't an equal exchange, we might choose to end that relationship because we don't feel the exchange is even. It's also interesting to note that during the early weeks of a relationship, often referred to as the honeymoon phase, sometimes people are more likely to ignore the social exchange balance. So they're going to take things that are normally viewed as high costs, like things they got to put up with the person. They're going to kind of downplay that and play up the potential benefits, kind of seeing that exchange even out in the future, which is why they might be so happy in that honeymoon phase in the first place. Now, if we are looking beyond just one-on-one relationships, but if we're looking about how I view my own exchange in terms of a group, social traps is an interesting thing to get into. So social traps are where people try to obtain short-term individual gains in an attempt to benefit themselves. But what happens, here's the trap, is it leads to a loss for the group as a whole. So here we see a protester, and it's absolutely her right to say, my body, my choice, to wear a mask. So she's taking that kind of normal mantra and applying it to wearing a mask. And absolutely, in some states right now, it is your choice to wear a mask. However, we do know from the science that that is going to have long-term difficulty for the group. So yes, is she able to go ahead and breathe more easily? Yes. But does that cause long-term problems when we apply it to the group as a whole? Yes, and that's an example of social trap. The opposite of social trap is when you go ahead and you put aside those personal gains quickly to hit larger gains for the group. So here, those of us that do choose to wear a mask in hopes of reducing the spread of the COVID virus, here is an example of us putting aside that, cooperating with each other to work to achieve something that is rewarding for the entire group. If you don't like the current events examples, then it would be you and your teammates working together in a sports competition to be able to get the team to win. You might even make some sacrifices along the way or have to work with some people you don't like, but that way the overall team is able to succeed. One of the ways that social traps or people valuing superordinate goals is tested is through the prisoner's dilemma. So the prisoner's dilemma is a very specific instance where we can test to see people's desire to either go on their own for their own self-benefit and then fall prey to the social trap, or will they go for a benefit towards the group? So here you put yourself into a little thought experiment. You pretend that you and your partner, let's call your partner Jane, have robbed a bank. Now you've been caught, and you are both in the interrogation rooms at the police office. You're in separate interrogation rooms, and the police officer looks at you and says, "Okay, we think we know what happened, but here's the situation. If you snitch on Jane and you point the finger at her, you can walk today. You get 0 years in prison. Jane has to serve 5. Just know that if Jane snitches on you and you don't say anything, then you've got to serve 5 years and Jane gets to go walk. If you guys both snitch, if you both try to go after your own self-interest, you'll serve 3 years. And if you both try to be nice to each other and not say anything, you both serve 2 years. Now, social trap says that by going off of our own self-interest, it hurts the group, right? So if both people go off their own self-interest, the total amount served is 6 years, which is the biggest penalty towards the group that you can get. If both try to work towards the common good, they will both serve just 2 years, which is a total of 4, which if you look on the board is the least number of prison years that can be served. If you try to screw over the other person, yeah, your total is down, but they have to serve 5, which is right there in the middle. So this is a way for us to test using game theory which one people would do. Think about your response. I do recommend that you click on the link on the Prisoner's Dilemma, and there is a game theory version of this dealing with money, basically, where you can see if you can get the most money possible versus an opponent, or if you that would be a social trap goal. Or if you would like to go ahead and try to see if you can get a superordinate goal where you and your competitors in that game get the most total money possible. That might be something fun to do. Okay, that finishes us up with 9-4 and the week. I hope you enjoyed our rip-roaring good time through social psychology. Take care.